all in our culture heard about problems with sexual molestation in the Catholic Church with priests. We have also more recently started to hear more frequently about similar problems with pastors and other church leaders across denominational lines. Hi there, I'm Dr. Carol, and I want to talk about when you are harmed in the name of God, especially when you are sexually harmed in the name of God. Sadly, that happens far too often, and the numbers are not nearly as important as your experience, what happened to you if you are harmed in the name of God. Now, what do we mean by that? It's a person in some level of spiritual authority using that spiritual authority to manipulate, wound, to steal, kill, and destroy, which is the enemy's tactic. That is not how God relates to human beings. But sadly, the enemy loves to use those tactics in God's name to do exactly that. That happens with church leaders. We have all in our culture heard about problems with sexual molestation in the Catholic Church with priests. We have also more recently started to hear more frequently about similar problems with pastors and other church leaders across denominational lines, youth leaders, ministers sometimes in very high authority, church school teachers. It can also happen with someone who may not be in a position, in a church position, but uses the name of God to manipulate, to sexually exploit. That can be in families when a husband uses God talk to sexually control his wife, or a dating relationship where God talk is used to manipulate. Perhaps the biggest harm that comes with that kind of abuse, and I'm using the word abuse to be broad and as well as deep, perhaps the biggest harm that comes in that kind of harm is what it does to the affected person's view of God. If you have experienced that, you know how hard it can be to separate the abuse, the harm, the manipulation from your picture of God. And again, that's because the sexual part of us is very close to the core of who you are. And when harm at your core is mixed up with God talk, unintentionally perhaps, your brain connects being harmed with God. If that happens, for example, with a father to a child, that child is going to, every time they hear of God as Father, that is going to that's going to create a cringing response, not a loving response of wanting to go there. They're going to close themselves off. It creates an enormous barrier to connecting with God in the person who has been harmed in that way. Dr. Diane Langberg, a Christian psychologist who has dealt in this area for decades, she summarized it by saying, you need a new view of God. The God that you have imagined connected with the harm you experienced is not the true God. And your perception of him, just throw it out. If that has happened to you, throw out your old view of God and start fresh. This is a long and difficult process. I heard from a young lady just today, as I am talking to you now, just today, I heard from her, and she has been wrestling with this for years because of how the God talk was mixed up in the sexual exploitation that she experienced. If you are loving and caring for someone who has experienced that, it will not help for you to simply say to them, you need to think differently about God. This is a deep, emotional, soul level, heart level reworking, healing, change that needs to come. And the very one who, if that is you, the very one who can help you most, you can't open your heart to, because in your mind, God is connected with harm, with pain, with being exploited and abused. So how are you going to open your heart to that again? Please know that God is not asking you to open your soul to being harmed again. Not at all. So if this is you, be gentle with yourself. Know it's going to take a process. Know you are not the only one. An intellectual understanding of the truth about God doesn't get very far in this process. That helps. But there needs to be a long process of unpacking what you experienced, the emotions around that, the wound that you experienced. You need someone to walk alongside you for as long as it takes. Someone who is not going to try and rush you, who is not going to rip the covers off your soul. God created you as a person with choice, of value, and the God that you have come to believe in through the abuse is not the God who created you. It's not the God who loves you. So throw out that old picture and let me encourage you that you can come to healing and growth and come to know a new God, the true God. All the words that I say, I feel so limited in even talking about this because it can be so confusing, so complicated. But I want to bring some hope and encouragement that it is possible. I know about that because of my own story. Just one of the experiences, I was, I'm going to say, lured into an intimate relationship with a ministry leader. Now, thankfully, there was no actual sex, but the exploitation was real. This was a ministry leader, and I looked up to him, and because of that, I mean, just all the God talk was mixed up in my head. So I appreciate in my own story, in my own soul, how difficult that can be. And I can also tell you from my own personal experience that it is worth walking through, that you can move forward. You can find healing. You can come to know the real God who is safe, who will never harm you, who truly cares about you and wants the best for you, and will never do anything to exploit you. So let me give you that hope. I would love to hear from you. You can come to drcarolministries.com and use the Contact Us page there. And for walking through this process of all the pieces of your story and finding forward motion, finding some forward steps to deal with this and write the next chapter of your story with hope, I'd love to invite you to come to our Sexpectations online course, yoursexpectations.com. I would love to see you there. There is hope. So come join me at yoursexpectations.com. And God bless you.